Hi, everyone. Welcome to More Than a Lawyer, the podcast where we celebrate and learn from multi-hyphenates, those remarkable individuals doing more than one thing. Today's episode, we have an amazing guest joining us today, the infamous Kenny Christmas, who actually was a general counsel at my company that I'm currently at prior. So Kenny, he is a well-revered Black male lawyer, as you can see for those watching. He started his career at the infamous and prestigious law firms O'Melveny and Meyers and Hansen Jacobson, but his journey didn't stop there. So he transitioned to becoming a manager, a producer, a professor, and now he is a writer. He's currently working on a screenplay about the Black Panthers, a project that promises to bring important historical narratives to the forefront. Beyond his professional achievements, he is also a dedicated father of two children, both being in university, one being Ivy League, one being at my alma mater, go Bruins, and his ability to balance a demanding career while nurturing his family's aspirations is nothing short of remarkable. In this episode, we'll dive into Kenny's career blueprint, exploring how he manages to wear so many hats, the challenges he's overcome, and the inspirations that drive him. Get ready to be inspired by Kenny Christmas's story of resilience, versatility, and passion. Welcome, Kenny.
Hey, thanks for having me, London.
Yeah, of course. So I just am geeking out right now because it's so rare to actually be speaking with someone that's basically doing the career blueprint for my life. I'm someone who is not only a lawyer, but I write, I produce. Haven't thought about managing, but maybe. And then I've also guest lectured in your class, your entertainment law classes at NYU. So luckily have been doing the teaching thanks to you. Can you just tell us a little bit about how you got started, having these many hats and what led to your interest in so many fields?
Sure. And shout out, you're my favorite teacher at
NYU.
Thank you. Kids vote you every year.
Well, thank you so much. I love them.
Critics' Choice Award for teaching.
Thank you.
I'm an accidental entertainment lawyer.
Really?
So I thought I was going to go to law school and become a prosecutor. And then as I got more into that, I loved the trial setting. I thought about, arguing cases at the appellate level. I did a lot of moot court. And I just happened to clerk at O'Melveny and Meyers one summer and fell in love with entertainment law and actually got the internship accidentally, was arguing in our moot court finals and went out for second year interviews late. So I came out to O'Melveny and interviewed, didn't know anything about entertainment law. There were only entertainment lawyers in the office. It was around Christmas time. They had a big transaction. And I just had something in common with each of the lawyers. And they ended up making a spot for me. And I came the following summer to work and then came back after I graduated and worked there for 3 years, loved it, and then wanted to get on the talent side. And so I interviewed with a couple talent firms, and luckily Craig and Tom over at Hansen Jacobson thought I'd be a good fit, and I went to work there for 3 years and loved it, represented film, TV, and they asked me to learn music. So that's my first suggestion is, with lawyers when they start or anyone, if you get asked to learn a discipline that you don't know, learn it because it can't hurt you. And it ended up helping me a lot, as I'll talk about later in my career. So I learned music and had the opportunity to work with some just amazing A-list clients on the music side, represented Boyz II Men, Alanis Morissette, worked with Herbie Hancock. There were two great lawyers there, Ken Hertz and Fred Goldring, who trained me, really smart guys. And then I got to work closely with Tom and Craig, and we had some great A-list actors and writers and producers. And so that was great. And then in 97, I was single, hadn't gotten married yet, no kids, and just wanted to be entrepreneurial. And one of the partners at Hansen Jacobson, Walter Teller, had asked me to work with Vincent D'Onofrio. And so Vincent and I became friends, and he did a lot of independent movies, which weren't, unusually profitable, but were a great learning experience for me. And so I got very involved in helping him put together these projects and negotiating his deals. He produced a lot of them.
Ooh.
And in 97, I had dinner with him and said, hey, I think I'm going to do something else, maybe entrepreneurial. And he said to me, if you become a manager, I'll be your first client. And I said, seriously? He said, yeah. We've worked a lot together on putting together projects. That's what these managers do. I said, because I've never been a manager. I don't know. And he said, it's not that hard. You'll figure it out. And so I started managing Vincent, eventually ended up managing maybe 15 actors and writers, and did that for a dozen years.
Wow.
Eventually, Vincent and I formed a production company. We produced a couple movies together, one that he directed, which was great. I've been fortunate and blessed. I've had the opportunity to work with some amazing artists who've had great impacts on my career. And the first was Vincent. And he taught me a lot about, how he looks at creating content as an actor. So that has sort of affected me, when I produce, and certainly now as I'm an aspiring writer. And so he just is one of the most creative, artistic people I've ever met. So that was amazing.
I love this. I mean, it's almost like showing how serendipitous moments of like when it's like meant for you. You know what I mean? Because developing this relationship with this talent, it's amazing that he was willing to take a chance on you. You're like, I haven't been a manager before, but he's willing to like be your first client. And then from there, it's almost like giving you credibility for other talent to like sign on to be your clients. And I'm just like wondering, do you think the advantage was just obviously excelling as the lawyer first, and that way they took you seriously and had a confidence in you to do like the managing side?
Great question. One of the things for me as a talent lawyer, the entertainment law generally is one of those areas that is as much business as it is legal. And so if you think of yourself as a business person, you can get involved in advising your clients around business strategy, career strategy, and it's so much more than just the legal issues and finalizing their contracts and that sort of thing. So, Vincent gave me the opportunity to help him produce some of his movies. There was a great instance where on one of his movies, they were very over budget. And it was a first-time director. And I remember Vincent came to me and said, hey, we need to find 5 more days to finish this movie. And the bond company is saying they may take over the film and get rid of the director. And do we have any way out? And my legal hat, I remember I had negotiated the approval rights, the screenplay approval rights to read any material changes in the screenplay that affect his role. And I'd fought for that language versus any material changes in the role. So I went back to the financiers and the bond company and said, if you cut out all these scenes for this his love interest, we're going to take the position you guys are in breach of his contract, and he's not going to show up and finish the movie.
That's
brilliant. They were very upset at that. But the flip side is I sat down with Vincent and the director, went to set, and said to them, this is probably the last movie you guys are ever making in Hollywood. They're never going to hire either one of you guys. You guys are over budget on a movie that was tight to begin with, and you're reshooting a lot of stuff that you can't afford to do. So how about I get you 3 days, you finish your movie, and you live to make another. And it's that sort of, conversations that I had with my clients where it was, I would fight for them, but I always felt like I needed to be a good business person and advisor and give them the medicine
Love that.
as well.
Yeah.
And they ended up getting their 3 days.
I love that.
They found the financier ponying up some more money. So I always approached my clients and talking to them holistically about their career, about their business interests, gave them both sides, and wasn't afraid to tell them sort of what their options were. I didn't necessarily try and tell them what to do,
Right.
but I wanted to present to them, the range of options and the consequences of taking various choices and the risks, which, for lawyers, we're risk averse by nature.
Yes.
So we don't like taking chances.
That's true.
But, as long as a client fully understands the risks and you lay out the lay of the land for them, then they have a chance to make good decisions.
I love that. And talk about a little bit more about this transition into writing, because, we had lunch a few weeks ago and we were really like connecting over the fact that we're both aspiring writers. I'm working on a screenplay. You've been working on, several drafts of your screenplay. Like, when did you start thinking, okay, after managing these clients, after being their lawyer and their advisor and producing with them, I have something to say and I want to tell these stories? Like, when was that light bulb moment?
I've been a closeted writer for many years.
I love that.
But here's the thing. What's great about being an entertainment lawyer is you get a fairly realistic view of how hard it is to make a career out of being an artist.
Yeah.
And it is difficult and the odds are long. And lawyers who are risk averse, once they understand those odds, but at the same time, being I ended up as the first general counsel of MRC, which at the time was the largest independent studio.
Yeah.
What are the odds of getting to that position in your career? What are the odds of doing anything that successful Black executives in our business and other businesses do? They're all long.
Yes.
So I think you got to push through the inertia around taking chances. And with writing, having managed writers and advise them as their legal representative as well, I always sort of told them, look, write about what you are passionate about, that you can bring insight and tell a story. This is what Vincent always told me. He goes, I want to give people a view into my character that they don't expect and they wouldn't otherwise see.
Love that.
And that's how I add to the creative pie. And so I would tell my writers the same thing is bring to your writing, your creative endeavors, a viewpoint that just isn't out there, that other people wouldn't see based on what you know and who you are. But don't put yourself in a position to be pressured by the economics of our business, because without a doubt, the biggest driving force in my view in entertainment is the arbitrary, capricious element.
I love that.
There's so much that you can't figure out about who makes it, what gets made. There's so many factors that go on. There's just a lot of luck. So there's this lottery effect with it, which is both the allure, but also the danger. Because if you're trying to pay your mortgage out of writing fees on deals and projects that haven't yet come to fruition, you could be waiting a long time.
Yes.
So I always thought I would write later in my career, and I'd write in a lot of different medium. So both film, television, books. I'm developing a book set in Mississippi, where my family is from.
Cool.
And I'm super excited because I think I'll write, for the next 20 years. But I waited to do it when I had, other income streams and backup plans.
Right.
Because it is tough being a struggling writer.
Yeah, I love that you're admitting to the strategy behind it, because that's my similar mind frame. I'm like, okay, this is something that I could do when I'm quote unquote retired, because, you still want to do something when you're retired. You're just retired from your day job, right? It's just like you get to choose what you're doing now. And I feel like writing is going to be my first love during that time. But you mentioned how this journey is hard and long. And can you talk about any pivotal moments or challenges you've overcome where you were just like, okay, this has significantly influenced my decision to pursue these other hats? Like, is it like, okay, after managing, you're like, oh, I'm managing writers, I could do this job. I'm a lawyer, oh, I could be a manager. I'm basically advising them managerial in a way. Was there like pivotal moments where you're just like, okay, I now have the confidence to take on these many roles?
I wish I could say I was more methodical and premeditated in what I did,
Yeah.
but that would be so unfair. So, look, I think that I think it's important to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah.
So for me, I got very lucky at various times, but I'm in that John Wooden camp, your alma mater's
Yes.
famous basketball coach,
Yeah.
who said there's no such thing as luck.
Yeah.
Luck is just the fork in the road where preparation meets opportunity.
Mhm.
So I had the good fortune of working closely with a number of amazing artists. Kenny Edmonds was one of them.
Wow.
I went to college with Tracy Edmonds.
Oh, no big deal.
They asked me, I'd done a project with Robbie Reed, this casting director, when I was the general manager of Wesley Snipes' company. And the general counsel of Edmonds Entertainment had left.
Mhm.
And Tracy and Kenny asked me to come over. Robbie introduced me. And that led to me working with Kenny for a number of years.
Right.
And he's another person who had a huge impact. His disposition. Kenny and Tracy also. Tracy was one of the smartest executives I ever worked for.
Wow.
She read all the contracts, had a viewpoint, could discuss. She should have gone to law school, truthfully. But Kenny, he had a calm about him. I never got to spend much time with Quincy Jones, but from people I know who worked with him, same sort of thing. Never got his feathers ruffled, was always took the high road, never got pulled down into sort of squabbles that a lot of people would get sidetracked. And if he had to pay a little money to keep the peace, that's what he did. And he would talk to me a lot about that. Like, Kenny, you're a good lawyer, but we don't need to be so aggressive here. We can actually take a little less. I'm like, what do you mean take a little less? I got you a much bigger fee. He goes, yeah, that's too big a fee. Or that royalty is too much. And so I learned that sometimes being a good deal maker means leaving, money on the other side.
It's being fair.
It's being fair.
I love
And
that.
so when I left Edmonds Entertainment after a few years and wanted to be more entrepreneurial, Kenny called me and asked me to represent him on his producing. And I had a great collaboration with his longtime lawyer, Mark Kavinsky, who's amazing and is a good friend. And it's those sort of things where if you do a good job and put your head down and deliver extra, opportunities will present themselves, and then you just need to walk through that door.
Right.
So
that's the hardest part sometimes is walking through that door.
It is, because sometimes it involves risk.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, why leave O'Melveny and Meyers? Why leave Hansen Jacobson? And it's because for me and my personality, I've always felt like I needed to take chances.
I love that.
And I wasn't willing to be dissuaded by the naysayers. And I think part of that was my mom. Black parents, a lot of Black parents instill that in their kids, particularly, those who came out of the 60s and 70s. My mom was the mom who went to the elementary school and when I was 7 years old and argued with them as to why I wasn't in, a better math and reading program.
Yes,
and it's because my mostly white school didn't think Black kids were that smart. Didn't want to test them for advanced learning. And they just had a particular view as to what our limitations were. And I was raised that we don't have limitations.
Yeah.
Except the self-imposed ones, which you got to resist.
Ooh, that is a message right there. No limitations except the self-imposed ones. I love that. But can you talk about, because you mentioned, coming up in the 60s and 70s, you're a Black male lawyer during this time. Like, talk about a little bit about the challenges you've had to overcome. Like, there's people that are always going to undervalue you or just think that you're not as talented
Right.
just because of the color of your skin or because you're a man. I don't know. Like, there may be reasons,
Well, yeah, it was, one of the nuances in the 70s and 80s, I started at O'Melveny in, let me see, 81, I guess.
Oh, wow. Before I was born.
Yeah. No, let me go back. I think that's wrong.
Okay.
So I graduated in 85 from college
Mm-hmm.
and graduated in 91 from law school.
Oh.
So I started at O'Melveny in 88.
Oh, wow.
And in the 80s
Mm-hmm.
and early 90s, it was the time when Black folks were just cresting into the upper ranks of corporate management in every industry.
Yeah.
And there was a phenomena that I encountered whereby a lot of us felt that there was only room for one. And so if you were that one in that job, you weren't necessarily reaching behind you to lift up the next person.
Oh, sad.
And so people, really got very territorial. That has shifted, I think. And now over the last 10 or 15 years, it's become, much more prevalent that those who broke through are reaching behind and really trying to make a special effort to bring people along.
Yeah, because we're realizing that was a false narrative that there's only room for one, right?
That's right.
But it does, it's interesting because even after I graduated law school and, I had my first Black female boss maybe like 2 years after graduating law school. And I was just like, this is amazing. The fact that she hired me, that's even more amazing. Like, there's room for both of us on the same team. And then I'm like, oh, who can we hire as an assistant? Can I bring someone that's also a color? Like, especially because there's so many talented people. It's just like, why not? And I think it did take someone taking a chance on me to realize, oh, that looks like me, Black female, that I was like, oh, there's room for both of us. So then why can't I also? And I think it did take you had to see that example first. And I think at the time you were starting, there were no examples because you guys were the ones setting them.
There weren't a lot, there were two prominent Black talent lawyers, Nina Shaw and Stephen Barnes.
Oh, yeah.
I developed relationships with both of them. Both are very gracious.
Amazing.
Nina started at O'Melveny.
Really?
In the corporate department, and then got some entertainment experience, and then started a law firm with Shaw Moonves. So that's and Ernie Dell.
And that's what created the Shaw Moonves.
That's right.
And then you worked
and
there.
And then I went there
Yeah.
and thought I was going to stay, there for the rest of my career. And I'm sorry, Nina and John and Ernie, I didn't. But the MRC job came up, and it was their first general counsel, and so I took that. But I would say Nina, throughout, I met her when she was at O'Melveny. And she's one of those people who has reached back and lifted up many, she's created, it's probably 10 Black lawyers who've since left Del Shaw. And some that are still there. And Gordon Bobb, who now is the managing partner, is somebody she brought to that firm and developed, and now is a powerhouse in his own right.
I've had to negotiate against him. I was like, oh, can I work with your associate?
So Nina's somebody I try and emulate, who's been just an amazing force, and her approach. And so that's why I started teaching, when I started teaching the class at NYU at their satellite campus. I went to all the lawyers at MRC, but in person went to all the Black entertainment lawyers.
I love
and said, hey, will you co-teach a class? That's how we met.
That's how we met.
But that's something Nina would do.
Right.
And so I try and model that behavior.
I love that. Now, what advice would you give to those who are looking at you and it's like, okay, somehow you're living their dream? What would you say is something you wish you would have known when you were starting out and wanting to pursue multiple careers? Like if you intentionally knew at the back of your head and you were like, oh, but I am in this 9 to 5. Maybe I have to pay grad school loans back. So it's like I have to do the grind a little bit. But is there anything that you'd say, like, in terms of thinking outside the box or anything?
Yeah. I'd encourage people to play chess, not checkers.
Ooh, I think that's a rap line. I love it.
Okay. So the chess of it all is if you're going to be in entertainment for a long time, you're going to continually deal with people over and over again. So the long view is, think of all those interactions as relationship building, even the ones with people who you don't care for, because you're going to have to figure out a way, because you never know when someone else is going to be in some room that you're not in, and they're going to be asked, hey, have you ever dealt with London Lewis? What is she like? And if you give people a reason to take you down a notch or go after you, you'll never know it, but that'll hurt you. And conversely, you'll be in situations where somebody years later will remember something you did for them that was really nice and go out of their way to help you. So in all of your decision makings, play the chess of it all. If you're going to write, my entertainment career started when I was 28. I'm 61 now. Wow. I've been in entertainment 33 years. Wow. So that's a long time. Yeah. And you get to do a lot of things. So don't be in too big a rush. Right. Learn your various crafts. My main skill is I think I'm a pretty good lawyer and a good deal maker.
I love that.
It took me a while to learn how to be a better manager. When I came out of law school, I think my Achilles heel was I didn't have measurable quantities of humility and gratitude.
I love that. Most lawyers are like that.
And I was just that proverbial bull in a china shop. And it took some people who I revered and thought a lot about to pull me aside and say, hey, sort of like what Kenny did. Yes. You don't have to get all the money. Right. And you can actually take the high road sometimes. I love that. And sometimes you can do things that, like I do a lot of nonprofit work. I'm on the board for the the Southern California Special Olympics. I do a lot of work in the education space with charter schools and the Inner City Education Foundation. We have 7 schools. But I came to nonprofit work 10 years ago because, again, it's this notion of giving back and wanting to help and change the landscape. And I think that's the way I'm going to write as well. I'm going to write things that I think could have impact. That they're going to reflect a lot of my personal experience, but try and bring stories to audiences or to readers about experiences that they might not have otherwise had the chance to experience.
I love that. I was just at a women's summit a few months ago and had the pleasure of hearing a Black female astronaut speak. And I was just like, wait, what? There's someone that exists like that? Who's doing her story? I would have never guessed. And if I was like, maybe like 5 or 8 years old hearing her speak, then I would think, oh, that's a possible role. I never thought of becoming an astronaut, but she looks so amazing, like fashionable and everything, still had her heels and everything. And I was just like, oh, wow, children need to see you. You need to have a children's book or something so that kids know that someone like you exists and you're leaving your mark, you're leaving a legacy, and you're inspiring the next generation to kind of see what else is out there. Not just, like I never knew about becoming a producer or a writer and that's why when they were like, you have to go to grad school, it's just like, okay, I didn't want to do math or science, so I guess law is going to be the default.
Right. Well, think about that. That's a great example. A female Black astronaut. That story can be told a lot of ways, from a lot of different viewpoints. could be really interesting for a Black female writer to tell that story, and how might she tell it differently than somebody else. It doesn't mean that, white people can't tell Black stories, because I think that is a very dangerous sort of rabbit hole to go into, because 90% of the content is not written about people of color.
Yes.
And if you make this argument, and I've had these conversations at studios, including our last studio, where I argued that we can't put ourselves in a box where we say we're going to make Black content and it needs to be told by Black writers and Black directors. I think that the question to be asked is, who's the best person to tell the story and who can tell an interesting version of that story?
Love that.
And a lot of times that is going to be a Black storyteller, but not always. And the reason why I think you have to do it that way is because what about all the jobs about non-Black stories that Black writers and Black directors want to tell? Why can't they tell the story about a white astronaut going to Mars? Right? But if you say a Black person's the best person and the only person who can tell a Black story, that kind of takes us out of a lot of jobs. So I think the question is, who's best positioned to tell this story in the most interesting way? And I think naturally that will be, people of color will have an advantage telling stories about people of colors, or writing them or directing them, but not always, because I've actually met a lot of white people who, had a lot of insight into our culture, and interesting,
and if they're passionate about it, they've done their history and research.
I think that's right.
Yeah, that's amazing. And can you talk about mentorship and influence on you? Because did you actively seek mentors or advisors? Because it seems like in every company you've worked for or firm, it seems like you've always had someone that kind of took you under their wing. Was it very you had to advocate for that, or was it kind of just a natural progression?
I got lucky. So when I came out of college, I was trying to decide between law school and med school. And I went to go work in a corporate management program for SmithKline.
Oh, nice.
What's now, I think, SmithKline Glaxo. It was SmithKline Beckman back then. And they had 132 senior vice presidents in their global business, and only one was Black. And so I met with that guy, and the one piece of advice, he gave me two pieces of advice, actually. The first piece was, you meet the same people on the way up, you meet on the way down.
That's true.
So, get to know the janitor, get to know housekeeping, get to know the elevator guy, the receptionist, because he told me a story where there was a sort of a plot awry to take him down, and a janitor brought him a copy of a memo that he had pulled out of somebody's trash. And so I always adopted that that philosophy. So I try and meet everybody. When I started at MRC, we had almost 500 people. I think there were 75 people of color, which was a pretty good number. I met with every one of them personally within the first 3 months of me working there, regardless of what department they were in. I also met with every legal personnel, regardless of whether you were Black or white. But I made sure that if you were a Black person in the doc division or the TV division, I knew who you were.
I love that.
And I told everyone my door was open. So, and that's because of that vice president. I called him and said, I just got here, I'm Black, and do you have it? And he said, sure, come on up. Today, just at 6 o'clock.
I love that.
Not make an appointment. It's
just
I leave
come
at 6, I'll stay late, and we talked for an hour. So I'd encourage, Black executives, young and otherwise, to adopt that similar approach. Because, if you give it away, it'll come back. And you just never know. I've had so many great experiences with people I've been able to mentor or help that and seen them take off. And it's just been amazing.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And can you tell us about, because this is the last question before our lightning
Mhm.
round. Could you tell us about any future aspirations you have? Is there anything else where you're like, you know what? I want to be the next, I don't know, golf champion. Like, is there anything else you want to take on next? Because I know you're an avid skier. I was like, shout out to your Lake Tahoe place.
As an avid skier,
Yeah.
my golf game's pretty poor, so we can't talk about that.
Oh.
I would just say, hopefully in the next 2 years,
Okay.
I will release a book
Ooh.
written about, in part, a nonfiction,
Yeah.
fictional work
Okay.
that has some nonfiction
Elements.
aspects to it.
Ooh,
And very much the plan is to talk about sort of what I call the tyranny of now.
Ooh, that title.
The tyranny of now is this concept that I'm really fascinated about. And it speaks to, particularly in social movements, where well-intentioned people try and create change, but they're trying to change deeply embedded social norms and customs, particularly like we face in the South, where they had slavery. There's Confederate flags that are still hanging in people's offices, and they'd be flying in places, and there's statues that are just being taken down. So racism is alive and well in this country, particularly in the South, but it is changing. And it will change, and the country's changing. But the tyranny of now is this notion that it won't change as fast as people think. And because of the sense of urgency that a lot of well-intentioned people bring, there can be this associated frustration because it isn't happening now.
Right.
And that's the tyranny of now. And I think that concept explains a lot of what we see in today's politics and a lot of, the shift in the browning of America and the resistance to that sort of change. And the frustration around it, like how could we, so.
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills. I'm like expecting a signed copy. I cannot wait for that. Okay, well, we've moved on to the lightning round. It's just 5 easy questions, more like fill in the blank style. And we ask our guests to do 1 to 5 word responses.
Okay.
So I'll just start. My passion in the arts and entertainment comes from what?
Change making.
Ooh, I love that. I think that was one of our best responses. Having it all means to me what? Because someone may look at you and it's like, you have it all. You have the kids. You have all of these. You freaking worked with Babyface.
Being at peace.
Ooh, that is true. Now you sound like my husband. A fun fact about me that you may not know is what? Other than your golf game's not good.
Ooh, that's a good question. A fun fact about me that you...
Because you're an avid traveler, too. You're always traveling. Is that a fun fact? I don't know.
I once jumped off a cliff.
Really?
In Greece from 6 stories.
And no broken legs,
Survived.
Wow. I mean, you are sitting here in front of me. That's amazing. I do not know that. Do more what? I mean, I assume philanthropy. I assume writing. Is there anything else where you're like, do more? I have to do more of this.
Be of service.
Ooh, I love that response. And then how was your experience on this podcast? Do you feel like you could come back for another season?
Love it. And I would say this personifies the notion of taking chances and being innovative and creative. The fact that you have created this forum to have these discussions itself is an example of people who are trailblazing. So
thank you.
And I'll go back and I'll add a part B to the surprise. I predict in the next 5 years that you and I will produce something together.
I cannot wait. You've heard it first. So that's what, 2029? I'm just counting down. I'm excited. That would be amazing.
That would be great. I'd be so happy.
That would be full circle moment right there. And then we'll have them back to talk about it. In addition to the tyranny of now in 2 years, I'm already calendaring that interview. This has been so amazing, Kenny.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I mean, it's all the way in Hollywood, so it's a little bit of a trek for you. So thank you so much. I've been truly inspired. I just wanted to give you a chance if there's been any last words, any social media or contact info you want to leave for the guests if they wanted to like reach out. Some people leave their IG or their TikTok, but I don't think you probably are like, not TikTok today.
My last name is Christmas.
Yes.
With any amount of enthusiasm, you should be able to find me.
This is so very true. I mean, it's rare that I meet also another lawyer with a unique name. Kenny Christmas. I'm London Lewis. It's just like, I love it. You're definitely the male version of me. But yeah, so all right, folks. I mean, you've had another amazing, inspiring lesson today. I hope you enjoyed and were equally inspired by today's conversation. Be sure to tune in next week when we have another amazing guest showing us how cool it is to do more than one thing. After all, we're so much more. And yeah, until then, toodles.